Possibly in Michigan, 1983. If this title isn't familiar to you, then let me share you a bit more information about the spooky film that we'll be covering today. And if you still don't know what I'm talking about after the explanation, then you're probably too young or you're just not chronically online. But anyways, Possibly in Michigan is a musical horror short film written and directed by Cecelia Condit, and in this film it's about two women being stalked by a cannibalistic murderer, and if you ever use TikTok, then you most likely heard an audio that came from this film. Let me read some very popular lines that might ring a bell. She couldn't have been that crazy, I don't think so. Oh, you don't think so? Well, she put her poodle one time in a microwave oven. Or, I bite at the hand that feeds me, slap at the face that eats me. I was gonna do a dramatic reading, but I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, I hear those audios everywhere, so if you don't recognize it, then I don't know what to tell you. But back on topic. Unlike other things I've covered in the past, this is just a single video that is almost 12 minutes long rather than an episodic series. However, while recapping this film, I'm going to split them into segments and give each segment a random but hopefully fitting title. I'll also be sharing my additional thoughts after each segment. With that being said, if you're interested, sit back, relax, and as always, my name is Estrella. Let's begin. The Stalking Animal. First, we open with music and a title card before getting shown a woman stepping out of an elevator. She walks past some stores with mannequins, and as the song continues, we realize that it's talking about a cannibal that is described as an animal. Not only that, but behind the woman is a man in a suit wearing a mask. Speaking of which, the mask is interesting to say the least because the mouth is wide open as if it's permanently screaming or ready to gobble someone up. Now back to the woman, she's riding down the escalator and the music stopped and is replaced with a voiceover sharing information about the woman. Her name is Sharon, and apparently she attracts violent men. Not only that, but she makes the violence seem like it's almost their idea. We then get introduced to her friend Janice, who's similar to Sharon, and thanks to the voiceover, we also learn the name of the stalker, Arthur. These three have two things in common: violence and perfume. Let's stop here before continuing. If we didn't hear the narration, we probably would have assumed the women were victims to a very sketchy person, which is technically kind of true. However, knowing that they all share a similarity in violence, it makes it almost seem like the women aren't completely innocent. For example, when it mentioned that Sharon makes men believe violence was their idea, it almost makes her sound manipulative. But that's only assuming she is to blame. I could just be looking into that wrong, and she's just a victim who gets caught up with the worst men by accident. In order to find out, let's continue. Perfumes and microwaves. Returning to the women, they're enjoying the pleasant smell of perfumes. Arthur's still looming behind both of them, and they had an interesting discussion. Janice found a perfume she liked and described it as Mother's crazy sister Kate. And briefly on the screen, we see someone running before continuing on with the friends' discussion. Sharon likes the smell too, but doesn't seem to believe that Kate is crazy, so Janice explains how Kate microwaved her poodle. Janice asked if the purpose was to eat it, and Janice said, "No, silly, it was to dry it." And while she was saying no, Arthur mimicked her hand motions. And when she goes on to explain that the poodle exploded, Arthur made another hand gesture that emphasizes her words. And at the end of the story, she said that both were found dead. Oh. But anyways, the two agreed that she must have been out of her head, and the two left hand in hand to continue looking around the store. And with the sight of a falling building, we transition to the next little song. Janice found her favorite perfume that the two were looking everywhere for. We also get shown other visuals, such as a person running with a dog and a woman dancing in a dress. We also see Sharon relaxing on a couch spraying perfume on herself while Arthur was standing behind her. But ignoring that for now, Janice asked Sharon to buy her a perfume too while she waits by the door, and they said goodbye before parting ways. This is where we'll pause again. It's kind of strange how casually they talked about a poodle and an ant getting exploded. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. No, I'm kidding. Getting shown Sharon resting on the couch with Arthur behind her, maybe it's trying to tell us that Arthur's always been looming behind her for a very long time and she just never realized it. As for the visuals of someone running with a dog, maybe that's just trying to emphasize on the fact how messed up Kate was with her poodle. You're meant to be outside having fun with your dog, not sticking them in microwaves. Or I'm overanalyzing that. I don't know. Let's continue. Run, rabbit. After buying the perfume, we see both of the women walking around the mall. Remember, they split up temporarily, but they're going to join up together soon. But before they meet up, a new song begins. The song explains how she keeps coming across strange men that want to bite her, and that a man she kissed ate his women friends. Yikes. Now, only dogs follow her. Speaking of which, we see familiar visuals of someone running with a dog. Not only that, but we see the women at a party dancing with a bunch of men in suits while also wearing masks. similar to Arthur. Speaking of Arthur, he was discovered. Janice noticed Arthur behind Sharon and alerted her friend about his stalking. Obviously, this freaked out the women and they both proceeded to run. And while running, they passed a store with mannequins. However, instead of the normal ones, they had rabbit masks. Eventually, they successfully made it out and hopped into their car to escape. However, he still seems to be following in his own car. As for the visuals, we see the dance party again, Kate with her poodle, and one of the women picking up a gun. As for the song, she questions if they met before, possibly in Michigan in a strange department store, and she hopes to not see him again. She also sings about if it's up to her to make strange ones dead, while also singing, "Here we go again," which makes the visuals of one of them picking up a gun a little implied violence. She then sings a familiar line about an animal cannibal while showing us visuals of Sharon and potentially a dead body in a similar pose to her. After this, the two women arrived at their destination and stepped out of the car, but let's pause here again. The visuals of the two mannequin women wearing rabbit masks is interesting. The reason why I find this interesting is because when you think of a rabbit, you always acknowledge that they're prey when it comes to the food chain. You can also recognize that rabbits are fast and they run away from danger, which is what the two women are doing. They're being hunted down by that stalker and they're his prey that are attempting to run away. However, this doesn't make the women completely helpless. If the women have dealt with this before, then that means they're not unfamiliar with violence. So, they won't shy away from using violence against someone who wants to do the same to them, which could explain why we saw one of them picking up a gun. And ignore my first assumption about her being manipulative. Maybe it's just the fact that men are drawn to her because they see her as an easy target, and that's why she always ends up coming into contact with them. And because she's seen as weak, that's what makes them want to act violent towards her. Hear me out. They're willing to seem like easy targets for men, so they can lure them into like a false sense of security, so they can take them out, so these men don't wreak havoc on other women that are weaker than them. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it, and as for Kate, there's no excuse. Don't stick your pets in microwaves, people! Actually, that could be symbolism. She put her dog in a microwave to help dry it off, which is kind of a good gesture. However, it ended in the downfall of both of them because the poodle exploded and she died because of that explosion too. This could represent toxic relationships where everyone blows up in the end because of a stupid decision. No, that's stupid. What am I talking about? I'm overthinking it again. I'm sorry. Let's just continue. No safety around a wolf. As I mentioned, the women arrived home. They said goodbye to each other, and in the background we see Arthur still sticking around. But ignoring that for now, Sharon stepped into her home, and during this we hear a voiceover again. The voiceover explains that Arthur longs for that sexual scent that smells like home. Okay. Not only that, but he disguises himself so often to the point that he's forgotten who he was. But unexpectedly, we see him unmasked. You see, he's always pictured himself as the frog who can transform into Prince Charming after getting a kiss. Once he gets that kiss, he'll become what she wants. We then see him approach the house door and ring the bell, but Sharon was peacefully sleeping. And while she was resting, we also see visuals of dead body overlapping the visuals of her sleeping. Eventually, she jolted awake and went to check the door, but after realizing that it was Arthur, she hid and grabbed the phone. As for Janice, she was busy shooting other men in suits with animal masks, but stopped after hearing the phone start to ring. Obviously, that was Sharon. Sharon tells her friend that there's a strange man at her door, specifically the one she was hoping not to see again. Janice then said that he isn't a run-of-the-mill animal. Specifically, he's got the head of a wolf and a large mouth that could fit Sharon. We then see the man pick up a brick to use to break a window and he crawled inside. Janice then left her house, shooting more men in masks, trying to run to her friend's house. And while running, she repeats again about how large that man's mouth is. Speaking of which, the man is right behind Sharon and said with a large mouth, it's the better to eat her with. The two then kissed and the man presented her with two options. He could either eat her right now, or he'll cut off her arms and legs. They had a bit of a struggle until eventually he knocked her down and kept slapping her in the face. She said that love shouldn't cost an arm and a leg and questions whether he actually loves her and if there's been others. Apparently there's been 6 others and she's the 7th. He then says that she smells so good, like a sweet flower, and they continue to struggle until Janice arrived just in time and shot him. Real quick, let's stop here. I guess the rabbit symbolism of the women being prey was correct. Whenever I think of a hunter animal that's after a rabbit, a wolf is at the top of the list, which is what Arthur's representing. As for what wolves go after, I think of both rabbits and sheeps. Speaking of sheeps, the women almost seem like wolves in sheep's clothing. They seem like helpless prey, however they have the power to become the hunters if they wanted to, meaning they can become the wolves if need be. Like Janice. She got that thing on her, she's not afraid to shoot, and that's what she did. Protected her friend by quickly rushing over to permanently stop Arthur. Clearly she doesn't want to be a victim or prey. Earlier she's been fending off a lot of other men, so clearly she hasn't been prey for a while. She's a natural at what she does. Speaking of which, she knows a lot about what she's doing, so let's continue. A tasty meal. Sharon was initially stunned until eventually she joined Janice with dragging the body out of the room in order to dismember it elsewhere on top of some newspapers. Once his body was in pieces, they seemed to have put him into soup and ate it. Okay. Suddenly, this reminds me of Kesha's Cannibal song. Cannibal, cannibal, I'll eat you up. What am I doing? Anyways, they enjoyed their meal while nude and had a smoke break as another stalker guy was looming in the background before vanishing. Later on, they still had the bones to deal with, so they put it in trash bags, making it seem like ordinary trash, which got collected soon after. The women watched from the safety of their homes as the garbage truck took it away and soon crushed it. We also get shown the credits, and the film ends here. A lot of interesting stuff happened in the last few minutes, so let's move on to the conclusion of this video. Now, as I was mentioned in the beginning, it's true that the women seem to attract very strange men their way, and for some reason they're all weird. Either these men go after her on purpose because they believe she's weak, or she doesn't know how to pick the right men. Regardless of what the case is, these men want to take advantage of her. An example of one of these men is Arthur, who was stalking her when she was just trying to have a fun day with her friend Janice. However, Sharon isn't helpless. With the help of Janice, who isn't afraid to use a gun, they were able to dispose of their stalker, and rather than being the victims who got eaten, they became the hunters who do the eating. They pulled an Uno reverse card on Arthur, basically. So what did I gather from this film? Anyone can be a wolf in sheep's clothing? Anyone can be a hunter rather than a prey? Best friends will always have each other's backs and they'll even hide a body by eating it? Scratch that. Anyways, it's a very interesting film to follow along with and surprisingly has very catchy songs. They're short, but amusing with a hint of creepiness, and so much potential to be used for a lot of things based on what I've seen on TikTok. There's also a bunch of visuals sprinkled around throughout the film, which I tried my best to point out, but if I missed something, you could always check it out yourself. I do encourage that you check it out yourself because it's actually a pretty interesting watch, even if I did spoiled it for you. But yeah, never become the prey, become the hunter, be that girl boss alpha. What the frick is coming out of my mouth? I'm gonna shut up right now. And as always, the links are in the description if you want to check it out. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, do that funny little notification thing, maybe follow my Twitter, I rarely post though. And yeah, better not catch you dying on me. Goodbye. I bite at the hand that feeds me, slap at the face that eats me. Some kind of animal cannibal. Re.